Welcome to the Money Mentors Podcast.
This week here on Money Mentors, we are continuing our special series on taxes. And let's say you hate paying taxes. We all do, right? But you're not alone. And IRA expert Ed Slott says you might be better off paying your taxes now rather than later. Now, he tells Morningstar's podcast that politicians know our retirement accounts will be the easiest thing to tax to pay for all the spending they're doing.
So this has kind of always been the low-hanging fruit for Congress, easy to tax, because they know that was the deal everybody made. They said, we got a tax deduction up front. That was kind of like our deal with the devil, right? We got the tax deduction up front, but as with any deal, there's a day of reckoning, and the day of reckoning is when you take that money out. But the problem now is the uncertainty of what future higher taxes could do to your standard of living and your purchasing power in retirement.
It is all in the details here, and that day of reckoning is coming for a lot of our listeners who are getting close to retirement. So how do we reduce our tax bill looking ahead to the future?
Planning. And I will say, first and foremost, if you're not familiar with Ed Slott, go listen to, any podcast he's been on. I know he's got a couple books. Go to his website. He's a fantastic educator when it comes to IRAs. We had the pleasure of meeting him and listening to him a couple years ago.
I could listen to him every day.
Oh, I totally agree. And one of the things that stood out to me was a kind of a little acronym. The IRA stands for an IOU to the IRS. And that really seems to kind of hit home with people. And I think he's right. I deal with this every day working on financial plans. And I actually just did one this last week that RMDs are going to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
This client had saved very, very well. 401k performed very well over time, but now he's sitting with a couple $1 million, and they did a great job reducing their debt, having no debt in retirement. They've both got really good Social Security. They're going to do some travel and stuff with their kids and grandkids. But if we don't do anything about their RMD situation, they're going to be having to take about $300,000 a year.
Wow.
That's crazy, right?
Which is unbelievable.
Whoa,
and that's living off of, 40 or 50 off of that investment until he gets to RMD age, which is about 13 years away. And so that's what brought them in the door, were, having these conversations and how do we get our tax bill under control. So things like Roth conversions. We talked about in the earlier segment, talking to your kids about putting money away into things like their Roth 401k or even non-qualified dollars. Diversifying your plan not just by the investments, but by the tax qualifications of that money. If you think about, the three different buckets, the tax qualified or the IRA, the tax-free being the Roth, and then the taxable being the non-qualified, you can put anything, if we use the bucket analogy, you can put any investment in that bucket, regardless if it's the IRA, Roth, or non-qualified. The important thing is when you pull money out of that investment, you pull money out of that bucket, who's getting their hands on it first, right? And how much of that are you losing due to taxes? And it can be substantial. So things like Roth conversions or even using other investments like universal life insurance policies to generate tax-free income in retirement can be huge for those to save money on that tax bill in retirement and keep more of that hard-earned money in your pocket.
And don't take your neighbor or your friend's advice and do what they did, right?
Right.
On whatever investment that is. It may be right for you, but you need to ask the questions or sit down with somebody to make sure that resonates well with your plan. Because we know that some people, if they hear, oh, hey, I heard Taylor and Laurel talk about I should be contributing to my Roth 401k. Well, don't just go out there and say, hey, I'm going to change all my contributions now to my Roth 401k. You need to sit down with somebody and see, do you need to have that traditional side there because of the tax break that you get now and it makes more sense and we can kind of develop this plan in a few years? Or do you start switching it because you already had that traditional 401k in there? Now this Roth IRA is available, and then your company match goes to this traditional bucket. So there's a lot of things to consider, but know that your plan is going to be unique to you, especially if you're working with us at Matson Financial, and we want you to have those answers.
I think that's an important one too. I hear quite a lot as well. I've not been putting into the Roth 401k because I want to make sure I get my employer match. You will still get your match, but the match always goes to pre-tax. So we're always going to have something there that we need to handle and take care of in the future. But make sure that you sit down, you talk with somebody. That's what we're here for, to make sure that this is right for your plan. I say that there's a little asterisk next to some of the things we say on the show because it is unique to each individual person. Mm-hmm. It's not just a blanket statement. It's not always right for everybody. There's a lot of planning involved to make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you and your plan.
And Taylor, Laurel, USA Today recently took a kind of lighthearted view at taxes. We need that this time of year, outlining some of the more unusual tax deductions that the IRS has actually allowed. Things like breast implants, that's on the list, private jets, even pets make this list. But don't go trying to do this yourself, okay? Talk to your CPA or your accountant because there are very specific rules in these scenarios that might or might not apply to you. But this does go to show you should know what those rules are, or at least seek out some help with those rules because they might actually apply to you and you might get some nice deductions along the way.
Yes, and I think the most important thing here when it comes to tax deductions are you need to make sure that you can prove that these items were necessary, right? Or a legitimate business expense. And if it falls into those categories, great. Make sure you are talking about that with your CPA. And if you don't know if it does, still talk about it because you don't know if you don't ask. So give all these things, come with all your stuff and say, hey, I had this happen or that happen and et cetera. And they might say, yeah, we can do that here and there. But you want to make sure that you meet with somebody who you also trust in this area. We have a plethora of preferred providers here at Mattson Financial. So if you are one of those individuals and you don't have a relationship with a tax preparer or a CPA, we're happy to find someone for you, have that solution. So that way, everybody's sitting around the table working on your plan for you.
And how often does that happen in the financial world, right? I mean, that's the confusing part for a lot of us. One side's not talking to the other, but on taxes in particular, it's really, really important.
Well, and when we talk about taxes, it's like I start thinking about, well, what tax should we talk about? Tax on your investments, Social Security tax, Medicare when it comes to tax. It's like the snowball effect of one thing really going to the next. And in a lot of these situations, how the IRS or the government has set things up, there's not really a do-over button.
Right.
It's like you didn't know this? Well, too bad for you. Guess you learned it the hard way and move on to the next one. So you want to have experts in your corner. You don't want to make those mistakes.
And it's also not black and white, right? In the tax code, there's clearly a lot of gray area from breast implants to pets, right? And actually, I want to go through some of this because this is pretty funny. But,
go for it.
That's why it is so important to work with that CPA that knows your situation, in and out, but also works very closely with your financial advisor. Now, one of these stories here, I think this one is kind of funny because of the deduction size, right? 1995, scrapyard owner Sam Seawright won a $300 deduction for cat food by arguing he had set out cat food to attract wild felines to prevent snakes and rats from entering his scrapyard. Why not get a dog?
The cats catch these things. Come on, Taylor.
Well, that's true. That's true.
He obviously loves
when you think
cats.
of like Disney movies or movies in general, it's always the dogs in the junkyard, right? There are obviously cats, but
right.
That's funny.
Yeah, these are pretty interesting. So went to bat over a $300 deduction for cat food.
Right.
It's
exactly.
absurd. Legitimate
But hey,
business
money
expense.
is money to some people
That's
too.
true.
You know, I mean, I think I laugh about that all the time with Taylor because something will happen, or I'll see kind of a random fee on a statement. It might be $5.99, but I'm like, well, what's that fee? And Taylor's like, I don't know, $5.99 to spend on a phone with a customer service agent is going to cause me more stress. I'm like, well, I guess give me the phone. I'll call because $5.99 is so important to me. I want that money back, you know? So
yeah, it's sometimes just the principle of the matter. So in this case, I'm sure the guy probably didn't need the $300, but after all, these are the IRS tax rules, so why aren't you taking advantage?
You made the rules.
Yes.
I'm just going to show you how I'm adhering to them, you know?
But I appreciate people who will do this because I'm with Laurel. I'll pick
it's not
up the
about
phone.
the money at that point.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the principle of it.
So-
And my mom would be so proud to hear us say that, Jennifer.
Yes, she would.
Want weekly lessons from your money mentors? Yes. Hit the subscribe button now and listen every weekend on Wood Radio.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Fee-based financial planning and investment services are offered by Mattson Financial Services, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance products and services offered through Lakeview Financial Group, LLC, Mattson Financial Services, LLC, and Lakeview Financial Group are affiliated. To find out if Mattson Financial Services is licensed in your state, please call 800-536-8907.